Hi, what's up? Hello, my name is Liz, and you're watching For Booking Out Loud. So this is the final video in the series I've kind of been doing, looking at my 5 favorites of something from 2020 and my 5 wishes for 2021. I've already completed my nonfiction one of this, my series one, and my standalone books. So today I'm looking at my favorite authors of 2020 and 5 authors I want to explore for next year. Now, for these 5 authors that I read in 2020, I actually have some stipulations for myself. I have to have read more than one book by the author. That doesn't mean it was read this year, but by the time I'm making this video, at least 2 books from the same author. And I guess that's it. That's actually the only stipulation. More than 2 books. More than 1 book. More than 1 book, so at least 2. So let's just get into it. I'm sure none of these authors are going to surprise anyone if you've been watching my channel. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. We'll see. But honestly, I've talked about a lot of these books and a lot of these authors quite a bit. So, again, not surprising. The number 1 author I fell in love this year, to nobody's surprise, it is going to be Junji Ito. It is going to be Junji Ito. So this is just Gaio, and this is my second favorite book of his, but I love Uzumaki. And I've read the short story collections Smashed and Shiver. I've recently finished Ramina, which is one that just came out this month in English. And No Longer Human, I actually just finished today. Really tough read, but still incredible. I just fell in love with Ito's, honestly, style of writing and his horror aspect. The idea that you have to convince yourself to continue reading the story and to flip the page on the next horrible thing that's going to happen to his characters is phenomenal. His drawing style is phenomenal and beautiful. And lastly, I also love the idea that he continues to explore societal issues through his horror manga. And I can't get enough of him. There's still a couple books that I need to read from this author that's in English. And I'm super excited too. I've pretty much enjoyed everything that I picked up by Junji Ito this year, and I'm really disappointed in myself it's taken me this long to discover him. So, Junji Ito, number 1. My second favorite author of 2020 is not Daisy Jones and the Six, is Taylor Jenkins Reid. I absolutely love Daisy Jones and the Six. It is one of my top books of all time. And this is from someone who still hasn't heard the audio. I heard the audio is phenomenal. But I read the book and I still loved it. And then this year, coincidentally, I picked up The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo without realizing it's the same author. And I completely fell in love with that book too. I actually talked about it in my favorite standalones of 2020. So I absolutely love the 2 books I've read from Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I have actually put a hold on many of her other stories because I just want to make sure that I'm not missing anything from this author, because I have, clearly, and I want to continue exploring her in 2021. My third author that I fell in love with or already loved this year is going to be Erin Morgnstern. Again, The Night Circus is one of my top books of all time. I love the atmospheric aspect of it. I loved the setting descriptions. And honestly, the love story is just phenomenal. Again, in my opinion. And this year did she come out with any this year? Either way, I was able to pick up The Starless Sea from Erin Morgnstern, which is her most recent release. And again, it is gorgeous. Her writing style is phenomenal, and I will always pick up her future books, point blank. The fourth author I fell in love with this year is Stephen Graham Jones. The Only Good Indians was my first read from him, and that story was amazing, is amazing. I have not met a horror writer that makes everything seem realistic in the way that Stephen Graham Jones does. There's just no way that you can read his books without really messing up your mind and kind of putting yourself in the situation that his characters are in. And this is incredibly true for his young adult horror called Mongrels. I read it as a buddy read with Amy from A-Star Reads, and I'm still honestly thinking about that book. There's so many things he put in there, and it was just such a weird book, but still so phenomenal and amazing and realistic about everything that happened, especially considering that it's about werewolves, but again, in a very realistic way. I don't really know how to describe it other than it messed with my mind, and I'm still trying to figure out what that book ultimately was about and for and how it finished. I will be picking that one up again just to think about it again. And then finally, this past week, I finished Night of the Mannequins, which is a novella, I believe, or a short story from Stephen Graham Jones. And he's done a ton of short stories. That's just my first one that I've read from him. And so creepy. Loved the horror aspect of it. And honestly, the concept was insane. And I loved it. And it was definitely horrific. And I would pick it up again, point blank. I really fell in love with Stephen Graham Jones because of those reasons, and I'm looking forward to exploring other things that he's done. He definitely has a certain style. Now, the fifth author I fell in love with this year is Isabel Wilkerson. She has written The Warmth of Other Suns and cast both incredible nonfiction books that just have such bad choice of words. They have such important stories to tell. And she does it in such a way that you are captivated the whole time, and you can sense the importance of it and the truthfulness of her writing as you read it. But phenomenal author. I will, again, always pick up anything she releases from now on. Okay. So my 5 author wishes for 2021, I'm going to start off with N.K. Jemisin. She is a fantastic fantasy author. I've read the whole Broken Earth trilogy or series. It has the 5th season in it, and that series blew my mind, and it's so fantastic. And I also was able to pick up The City We Became earlier this year, and again, such a wonderful urban fantasy. If you haven't picked it up, I highly suggest it. But I really want to explore her other works in 2021, and this includes the Inheritance trilogy. Not too sure what that's all about, but I, again, heard it's amazing. It's N.K. Jemisin, how can it not be? And then the Dream Blood duology. Again, not 100% sure on what it's about, but it's N.K. Jemisin. And so those are some books that I really want to explore. Plus her other work. I know she's been included in a non-fiction book, I believe, of short stories, or just short stories that she's written over the years. So that was number 1. Number 2 is Octavia Butler. I am ashamed to say that I have never read anything by Miss Butler, and I've heard that she wrote incredibly intricate fantasy novels. So I want to pick them up. And honestly, I really have my eye on Kindred. I really have my eye on Kindred, and I have been for a couple of years. I just haven't gotten around to it. So this is me saying that I will get to Kindred next year. Point blank. Now, another author I want to kind of explore next year is Chuck Palahniuk. He is the author of Fight Club, and I have read that novel by him, but he has so many other works that I just haven't explored. Oh, and I read his nonfiction book about Portland, which is fugitives and refugees, kind of exploring what Portland was like in the 80s or 90s. Also an incredible book, especially if you're familiar with the city of Portland, Oregon. Anyway, I want to read a lot of his other work. I heard that he gets increasingly horrific, I guess you could say, as you explore more of his later work, and he's still releasing novels today. So I just want to pick them up, especially Choke, I believe, and Invisible Monsters. Those are 2 books that I really have my eye on by Chuck Palahniuk, and I'm just next year. Now, another author is also from Oregon that I want to explore. His name's Kesey. You might have heard of him. Again, he wrote The One Who Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And I have to admit, wasn't a huge fan of The One Who Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Although I read it when I was very young, and so I want to try to pick it up again to see if my tastes have changed, and if I like him. I also own Sometimes a Great Nation, and I've been wanting to read it for a while. It's on my to-read list, especially since I own it. So they're just books that I really want to explore and see if I am a fan of this author, Kesey. Now, my very last author I want to continue to explore in 2021 shouldn't really be a surprise. It's Stephen King. I have, I think, 11 books left that I own that I have not read from him. And those books are ones that I want and need to finish. And then, of course, if I enjoy those books, I really want to continue on to his more recent work, because a lot of the work I have is his earlier work. And he's just a very interesting author with very different concepts, and I'm really enjoying that about him. And if you need a good book with some great characters, and honestly, he's just great at characterization, pick up a Stephen King book, because you won't be disappointed. There's something for everyone, I think, at this point that I've read it. There's something for everyone in his works. He has sci-fi, horror, YA fantasy. He has an epic fantasy. He just has some graphic horror. He has psychological horror. And yeah, why not, you know? So those are 5 of the authors I fell in love with or already loved in 2020. And then 5 authors I want to continue to explore in 2021. I'm curious to see if you have a favorite author personally, and if I should pick up a book by them, because this list wasn't hard per se, but it definitely was difficult to narrow down. So please comment down below and have a wonderful, wonderful day. I'll see you next time. Bye. Looking at my 5 favorites of something and my 5 wishes for 2020. I've already completed the author, the series, and the standalone. No, I'm doing the author this time. Number 3,